Bibliophiles of the internet, my name's Adriana and this is the beginning of what will be my reading vlog for the reading rush. As you might have been able to tell from the vlogging camera, this is going to be a little bit more casual than usual. I just thought I would show you what I'm up to for the week and just give you my thoughts on what I'm reading in the process. Today is the first day of the reading rush and I have a couple of things I have to get done first before I can get any reading done. I have to do some writing and then I have to caption this week's video so I can just be completely done with it and just focus on other things. Then once all of that is done, I will finally get a chance to read, and my first selection is Some Places More Than Others by Renee Watson. This is an upcoming middle grade book from Bloomsbury and I'm very excited to start it. Side note, I take choosing a bookmark for a book very seriously, so I chose this one with a bunch of people on it because I don't know, I just thought like this book would be about like people and family and all this different stuff, so this makes sense in my head. So one of the cool things about y'all getting to see my week in progress is that you get to see when I get exciting book mail, which is like what happened today. I've been waiting for this box to get to my doorstep. It is this special box for Raina Barron's debut Kingdom of Souls, and I'm very excited to see what's in it. They told me all about this exciting box curated by the author herself to promote this amazing, new, exciting, own voices, Black YA fantasy story, so of course I said yes. First thing I see on top is this amazing, gorgeous print or postcard of the cover design itself. The cheat sheet calls this a character card and it says, "Meet our headstrong, fallible heroine, Ara." The next thing I see is this really interesting, intricate voodoo doll, and the description says, "Defeat your enemies one prick at a time." I'm really interested to see why the author wanted to put this in the box. Maybe there is some kind of voodoo magic in the story. I imagine so I'm really excited to see what that's about. They also included a bookish scented candle, which is described as the smell of old books. I'm not like the best judge of that, but when I opened it, it smelled very clean and fresh. They also included a bath bomb, which is an oatmeal and honey bath bomb, and the author writes, "Take solace in knowing that you're in for a wild ride." And the last thing before the actual arc itself is a snake bookmark, and it says, "Mark your page with a slippery friend." As we all know, snakes are the hot thing in YA, especially YA fantasy this year, so that's very on trend. And then of course we have the actual arc itself, Kingdom of Souls by Raina Barron. I believe this comes out on September 3rd from Harper Voyager. As I said, it's an own voices Black YA fantasy about Ara, who comes from a family of powerful witch doctors, and when she tries and fails to tap into her abilities, she latches onto this last resort idea of trading years of her life for scraps of magic. Just when she's considering that, the kingdom's children begin to disappear and a long imprisoned demon king is beginning to wake, and he will destroy the world as Ara knows it unless she pays the price for the magic that will stop him for good. I am very excited to see what this book is all about and hopefully read it soon to let y'all know what I think. I'm checking in with a reading update for Some Places More Than Others. Just to give you a little bit more context about this book, it's an upcoming middle grade contemporary story about Amara, who wants to fly from Oregon to New York so that she can finally meet her dad's family and see where he grew up, especially because most of her life those things have been mysteries. But now she's realizing that her dad hasn't spoken to his dad for 12 years ever since she was born, and she doesn't really know why. So that family dynamic is not quite what she expected, and she's also kind of hoping that this trip will allow her dad to reconnect with his father and sort of make amends. Currently I'm roughly halfway in and I'm actually pleasantly surprised because I think this is definitely on the younger side of middle grade, whereas most middle grade on the market right now is usually ages 12 and up. I would say this is probably more ages 8 and up, but that is not at all an indication of this book's quality in any way. I think there are some really strong threads being established about Amara not really feeling like she's enough in her own family, and how not really knowing where she's from and the experiences that have shaped her parents is really a kind of absence and loss. It's a kind of void, it's a hunger, it's a type of isolation, and she's really hoping that she can fill in those gaps. There's also some interesting stuff in here with Amara's mom because it kind of seems like she's overbearing and she's not really supportive about how Amara expresses herself, especially in terms of clothing and presentation, and also that Amara's mom is currently pregnant. And that is complicated for Amara because not only is she afraid that maybe she's potentially being replaced by the daughter her mom's always wanted, but she's also kind of afraid because her mom has had several miscarriages in the past. That's extremely complex because it shows that this pregnancy is not really something that Amara can trust, and that maybe by extension, her place in this family is not really something she can trust. So at this point, I really feel like Amara is struggling to figure out who she is, to figure out where she belongs in all of this, and I think that really nicely contextualizes this experience she's having in New York. I'm really excited to see how she's going to interact with her dad's side of the family and the experiences she's going to have on this trip, so I'm definitely curious to see what happens next. For now, I have dinner to go make, and then I have a ton of options for what I can watch on TV tonight. I just have to figure it out. I mean, I could continue rewatching The Great British Baking Show or rewatching Goblin. I could continue on with Angel's Last Mission Love, or So You Think You Can Dance, or Fruits Basket, or Money Heist, or so many things, just so many things. We are living in a golden age of TV, and I don't know what to do with that. We're also living like in the hellscape of like media, and I also don't know what to do with that. So it's actually pretty early on day 2, and I kind of surprised myself by switching up my routine. I usually read after I get some work done, but today I read first, and I actually have now my final thoughts on some places more than others. Something I kept thinking about when I was reading this was something that Amara's teacher said, and he said that there's a beginning and a story for everything and every one of us. So how do we find ways to keep those stories alive when it's so easy to let them just become background noise? How do we make what exists in the past tense exist in the present tense? And I think that's something that would particularly connect with Black folks and some of the issues they face. Like, you really get to see how Amara feels coming from Oregon, which is not a place known for its Black population, coming to New York, which is this cultural and historical epicenter and hub for Blackness. You really get to see how she feels connecting to her history in that way for the first time in her life. The story also questions, how does family feed into and shape our experiences? When we look at our family, in what ways are we reflecting them, and in what ways are we being reflected back? It questions, who were the people thinking of you and affecting you before they even knew you would exist? And that circles nicely back into how Amara herself is already shaping a world that will affect the child her mom is expecting as well. I just really feel like this story is a love letter to Black children and Black readers. It says that your history is one of beauty and complexity. It has texture and depth and weight. And that history can be realized in ways that are both personal and close, and also ways that are distant. Ultimately, I think this story is a powerful meditation on healing and history and knowledge. It's about Amara finally getting to open doors that have always been closed, and how important it is that she's finally getting to know some of the hidden places in her heart. So I really love this book. I would definitely say it's one of the favorite books I've read in 2019. I think I gave it 4.5 stars, and I would definitely recommend it to anybody and everybody. So now that I've completed that one much earlier than I thought, I will be continuing on with The Princess Who Flew with Dragons by Stephanie Burgess. I'm really excited to dive into this, but first I do have to get the work done that I put off to finish some places more than others, so pray for me and I will check in later. almost done with my writing for the day, but again, one of the exciting things about you getting to see my week in progress is that you get to see the book mail. This package actually is relevant and exciting because it actually contains my third official selection for the reading rush. By the way, I totally opened this package before I started filming this just to see if she was okay, so this is all fake. And so my third and final official selection for the reading rush is The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. I'm so ready for this. All the queer reviewers in my life have just been pumping this book up to no end, and I know it's gonna be great. Look at all the gay content. So it's the beginning of day 3 and I'm back with an update. I am now currently halfway through The Princess Who Flew with Dragons, and I can now actually sort of tell you what it's about. As I said, this is a middle grade fantasy story about Princess Sophia, who is tired of being used by her older sister for political gains. For instance, when this story begins, her sister has just exiled her sort of from her kingdom to go to a far off kingdom called Vienne, where she is supposed to be establishing diplomatic relationships. So one of the only comforting things Sophia has in her life is her pen pal, Jasper, who's actually a dragon who she's never met. Pretty much the second Sophia lands in Vienne, her diplomatic mission is bust, and she's just sort of living her life as a commoner, and that's when Jasper shows up as a newly transformed human, and the kingdom is attacked by ice giants. So now that we're at the halfway point, that's when the adventure is starting to kick in, and Jasper and Sophia are going to have to work together to defeat the ice giants and save this kingdom from certain doom, and it sounds like it's going to be really exciting and great. I do have to say, I think it's pretty clear that things have happened to Sophia before this book starts, things that I don't really know about because I personally haven't read the other 2 companion books in the series, but I think there's enough of a refresher at the beginning of this story that it doesn't really matter, and it's not really hindering my reading experience. I think a really big conflict for Sophia is that nobody takes her seriously, especially because of her age, and she's just really intent on proving herself. Related to that, because of her older sister, Sophia has this idea that princesses never show fear, and by extension, princesses never show their true feelings. And while Sophia does have to be diplomatic on this mission, you definitely see her struggling with conducting herself and expressing herself in a way that's not really authentic. This story also explores the question of agency, because Sophia is just tired of being viewed as this symbolic diplomatic trinket. She is a human, she is a person with complex thoughts and feelings, and she just wants the right to make her own choices and really make her own mistakes. So that's what I'm getting from this so far. It's just a really fun fantasy romp and this exploration of this other kingdom, and now I'm feeling more invested as the adventure picks up and continues. Do I think I'm gonna have the same amount of takeaway as I did from Some Places More Than Others from this book? I don't really think so, but that's okay because you don't have to experience every single book the same way. I feel like I should let you know that other than book updates, I don't think today's content is gonna be very exciting because I have work to do, and I also have some mandatory online trainings I have to do for the upcoming school year for work, and that is a long and boring and arduous process. And on top of that, we're also getting ready to replace some flooring downstairs, so there's a lot of like moving furniture and prepping that has to happen for that process. So not terribly exciting stuff, but very necessary stuff, and in summation, that is the life of an adult. So it's fairly early on day 4, and I did complete The Girl Who Flew with Dragons last night, so I'm here to give you my final thoughts. 2 main things. The first is that I think this story is an exploration of power and how we define power, and especially its relationship to strength. Some of these characters think that power is operating from a position of strength, and other characters think that power is relative and something that only exists when wielded over other people. There are characters who believe that power comes from weapons or violence, but Sophia is realizing that power comes in many different forms, one of those forms being reason and thought. So that was interesting. The second thing goes back to what I was saying yesterday about making mistakes. Sophia and her friends often view each other as symbolic in that they expect each other to be perfect, to be everything, to be representative of all these different characteristics and expectations. But no one person should be expected to be everything. We all need the space to be fallible and to make mistakes, but more importantly, to learn from those mistakes, which is what I feel Sophia does. That said, I think this story had some interesting things to say, but I wasn't completely satisfied by how quickly and easily this story wrapped up, and I really feel like the characters and and the relationship dynamics needed more development. I also think this story had a lot of missed opportunities. There were allusions to Sophia's mother passing away, her dad becoming depressed, even though that's just coded as him losing himself, how their family is not as close as she would like them to be, but none of that is really touched. And also the princess on this cover is pretty noticeably dark-skinned, but that's not mentioned in any way throughout the book. And even if this is like a fantasy world where prejudice and colorism and racism doesn't exist, I still feel like that's an indication of culture that still influences your experience. Why make the princess on this cover look this very specific way when in the book she could just be anyone? To me, that's just like a very white, a very I don't see color type way to do diversity, and we don't do it like that. So while I'm glad I got the chance to read this book because it's a really fun, exciting fantasy adventure story, I don't really see myself remembering much of it a month from now or 2 months from now. I really think it could have used a little bit more kick, and because of that I gave it 3.5 stars. So I don't think I'm going to be getting much reading done this morning/early afternoon because we are going to San Diego to visit my sister, but when I do pick up a book, it's going to be The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite, which I left on my nightstand and I'm not going to go get it. So just to hype you up, to get you into the story, this is a queer historical romance, and it's about this girl named Lucy who I believe her ex has just gotten married to a man out of convenience, and that sucks. At the same time, Lucy spent years working with her father, who is this renowned, respected astronomer, as his assistant and basically doing all the heavy work. But now that he's passed away, she has not been credited for any of that work. So that presents a problem if she wants to continue on with her work as an astronomer and be recognized by the scientific community, which she does. Enter Catherine St. Day, aka the Countess of Moth, who is newly widowed and just wants to be done with her husband's final project, which was to translate this astronomy text from French. So she sends a letter to Lucy's household asking if they know anyone who is qualified to do such a translation, and Lucy takes it upon herself to travel to the Countess of Moth and just do the job herself. And then queerness ensues. I'm really excited about this. It's gonna be gay and good and romantic, and that is absolutely everything I need in my life at this moment. So it is day 5 of the reading rush, and first things first, in case you missed it on social media, I have been officially asked to speak at BookNet Fest, and bitch, I am going. So comment question of the day, will I see you there? We are going to BookNet Fest, okay? So I'm really excited about that. It's giving me some good standing energy, so we're standing today. We're just doing all the things. But temporarily putting that aside, almost as importantly, I stayed up much too late last night reading The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics, and I have so many thoughts. This story starts with these two women who are both newly free in different ways, but they're also somewhat lost. Catherine has lost her husband, and for so many years, her entire life was defined by his. She had to sacrifice everything, her desires, her interests, to support his. Now that she's alone, she has time to ask herself, what does she want to do with her time and her life? Lucy has been hiding behind her father's name and prestige for so many years, and now that he's gone, she has to learn how to defend herself to the scientific community and also just how to stand on her own 2 feet. And I also think it's really interesting that these two characters have such different relationships with science. For Catherine, science was a point of her husband's toxic obsession. It's the reason she had to give up her whole life. And in her mind, it's a field that's dominated by ownership and possession and dominance. And of course, it would seem like that in this time period because science was mainly run by men, so of course it would be toxic. But for Lucy, science is discovery, science is freedom, science is a way of making sense of the world in a way that is elegant. Related to that, something else I find interesting is that each of these characters embodies what the other character is not. For example, Catherine is obsessed with embroidery, which is an activity that's been deemed very feminine and delicate and appropriate for their sex, which is something that Lucy has always been trying to escape her entire life. Lucy obviously is very scientifically minded, very ambitious, and that reminds Catherine of her late husband when their relationship was not exactly warm and pleasant. So in a way, these two characters being attracted to each other is a reconciliation of those differences, a reconciliation of the arts and the sciences. And of course, I love that this story is all about these two women who are allowing each other to truly be themselves without fear of judgment or belittlement for the first time in their lives. Both of these characters are coming to terms with circumstances where every facet of their life is not currently being dictated by men. They're both learning how to recenter their lives on themselves, and more importantly, they're giving each other that space. And at its heart, this story is all about women giving each other the chances they deserve. And that is so healing and cathartic to read. It is beautiful, it is queer, it is good. Let's discuss. So while I'm very excited to continue on with this, and I think the next part may have some kissing in it, I do have a lot of other things I have to do today. I have so much I have to catch up on today. I have some editing to do, and then I have a lot of TV to watch. I have to watch this week's episode of Are You the One? And My First Love just came back on Netflix today, and I should also be getting some mail that will definitely be distracting me from my reading, so we'll see what happens. I am gay and excitable and stressed. Quick update, it is the beginning of day 6 and yesterday did not go so great. I played a lot more Fire Emblem than I thought I would, and then in the evening we were binge watching Money Heist or La Casa de Papel, and you know how that goes, and it was a lot, and then I only read roughly 40 pages of my book. That puts me a little bit behind because I did the math when I first started this book and I figured out I have to read roughly 80 pages a day if I want to finish it by the end of the week, so clearly if I only read 40 yesterday, that's not enough. So today is gonna have to be a dedicated reading day if I'm to get to the 240 page mark, if not further, because I really wanna make tomorrow's work just as easy as it could possibly be. I don't really have any thoughts to add right now, but I do have to say, if this keeps going the way it's going, it could very well earn me that 5-star badge. Can I just jump in here for a moment and reiterate how cathartic and healing it is to read about these two incredible, brilliant, artistic, talented women who are telling each other how much they love each other and support each other and believe in each other between like kisses and moments of realness, because it is doing so much good for my heart. As of right now, I have just reached chapter 11, which is the 61% mark. I have to make it to the 75% mark, obviously, if I want to have met today's page goal, so we're on track. I don't want to be that bitch, but there was just a wild sex scene at the 69% mark, and that seems like fate. Miss Daisy, are you gonna help me film today's update? So yesterday, actually before I got my book mail, I did make it to the 75% mark, and then I thought I would read a little bit more before I went to bed, and I actually finished the book. So it is time for my final thoughts on The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics. This book healed wounds I didn't even know I had. It's this unapologetically thoughtful, beautiful, joyous, raunchy, queer, feminist romance text. Both Lucy and Catherine have a hard time thinking of themselves as enough. Catherine is very hard-pressed to call herself an artist, and Lucy has trouble thinking of herself as a real scientist. But within this relationship, they both see the other person for exactly who they are. They uplift each other constantly, and in so many ways, they're telling each other, you can, and you are enough. I also wanted to mention that Lucy is adamant not just about translating this text in a strict sense, but she wants to expand on it so that it's accessible to anyone who wants to learn about science. She recognizes the elitism and the gatekeeping in place and how these scientific texts are often predicated on the idea that the reader has already accessed these lofty, erudite, advanced theories beforehand, and she is not interested in perpetuating a world where only a select few are able to contribute. On a very different note, I do want to mention that this book has some very good sex scenes. Both Catherine and Lucy like to be dominated or commanded in a sense, and that's very familiar for Catherine because her late husband used to be very rough with her and basically take whatever he wanted whenever he wanted it. But now that she and Lucy are learning how to be together, she's realizing that what she mistook as her husband's passion was actually a kind of violence. And that idea extends not just to sexual intercourse, but just how we're conditioned to give certain people free passes and how we excuse macro and micro violences against women, against minorities, against communities as these well-reasoned intentions. And this whole book, in so many different ways, basically says, actually, no, there's a better way to do that, and here it is. I could say so much more about this, but it's definitely one of my favorite books I've read so far in 2019, and it did, in fact, earn those 5 stars. So what's gonna happen now is I've decided I am a badge-hungry bitch. So I was finally able to do a Twitter sprint this morning, so I got that badge. I'm going to edit and upload a Bookstagram photo, so I'm gonna get that badge, and then I was hoping to read a couple of bonus extra comics so I could get that over 1,000 pages badge because I am that bitch. Those are my plans for today. I'm just really excited that I did what I set out to do and I finished my main TBR a day early so that now I can do all this extra stuff because obviously as an overachiever, nothing is ever enough. I just completed Kaze-san and Bento by Takashima Hiromi, which is a queer manga and the second volume in the Kaze-san and series. This series is cute and soft and queer and good. I talked about it in my recommendations video for queer comics. In case you don't know, this is a queer romance between two girls who are very different. Kaze is the outgoing, charismatic, ultra-popular track star, and then Yamada is very shy and introverted. She is the sole member of the school's greenery club because she just loves plants. They run into each other one day when Yamada is tending to the flower beds, and then through a series of very cute mishaps, they begin to date. I've said this before, but I really love that this series reads as a compilation of one-shots as opposed to like a day-by-day drama, because then we just get to see this couple's cutest and best moments. I mean, the chapters in this volume are like Yamada trying to figure out how to give Kaze a bento for the first time, or going to cheer Kaze on at a track meet for the first time, or they're going on a school trip together and they're trying to steal time away for themselves. It's simple, it's just those quiet moments, but it's really cute. This volume also explores Yamada's insecurities because she's worried that Kaze is more experienced than she is, and that feels realistic to me because when you're in a queer relationship for the first time, you don't really know if you're doing things right. There's a broad outline, there's a kind of expectation if you're a cis heteronormative person, but if you deviate from the norm in any way, you don't really know what it's gonna look like, what it's gonna feel like, if it's gonna fit what you expected, or if it's gonna be different. And this volume surprisingly also had some small elements of sensuality. There was some nudity that I was definitely not expecting, but it was actually really classy and soft and tastefully done and strangely sweet. And again, that checks out for me because I feel like that shows Yamada sort of discovering her sexuality and coming to realize all the different ways she's attracted to Kaze, which again is something she has absolutely no experience with, but she's learning as she goes. When all is said and done, I just think the story is about these two wonderful, caring, earnest characters who are just trying to figure out how to be together and learning how to be each other's girlfriends, and that will just get me in the feels every single time because it's just joyous. Really enjoyed this. I will definitely continue on with the series, and I gave this one 4 stars. So that's one comic down. I have one more left to read, and you will see what my final selection is next. If you're seeing this clip, it means I officially completed The Adventure Zone, Murder on the Rockport Limited, illustrated by Carrie Peach, written by all the McElboys. Obviously, The Adventure Zone is a graphic novel adaptation of a podcast of the same name where the McElroys and their father play D&D and other tabletop role-playing games, and it's just fantastic. This particular series follows three main characters, a human fighter named Magnus, a dwarf cleric named Merle, and an elf wizard named Taco. These three idiots are basically enlisted in this super secret fantastical society that is trying to destroy these highly dangerous, destructive magical objects before they fall into the wrong hands. I've also said this before, but as a mega fan of this podcast, it is so satisfying and delightful to see this story come to life in a completely new way, and it is utterly hilarious. I personally feel like this comic series is engaging and charming enough to be understood and enjoyed by anyone, but I do understand that sometimes it falls into like, if you know, you know, if you don't, you don't. Luckily, this bitch knows. And Murder on the Rockport Limited is one of the best arcs in the Adventure Zone balance, period. It's fun, it's fantastical, it's tongue-in-cheek, and then you have this classic murder on this Lux locomotive and trying to figure out who done it. I really like how Carrie Peach and the McElroys have gone back through these arcs to adapt them, to comb through them, tighten them up, just highlight all the best parts and the most iconic lines and best inside jokes. I really can't say it enough, but it's great. Clearly, as a fan of the podcast, I'm somewhat biased. I love the podcast. I love this graphic novel series. I highly recommend both. Both of them are just chef's kiss. I love this adaptation. It is second to none. And of course, I gave this 5 stars. So that's it. That's a wrap. That's the reading rush. That's a week in my reading life. Thank you so much for watching my first reading vlog. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you stuck around till the end. I know it's long. If you did, comment down below and let me know something that lets me know that you're a real one who stuck around till the end. Other than that, I will see you in my next video. Bye!